Dorothy Koomson writes what she calls emotional thrillers, novels that combine an emphasis on relationships that you expect from commercial women's fiction with the intricate plotting and darker themes of a whodunit. Her latest book, her ninth, is called The Flavours of Love, and it's about a woman whose life is turned upside down after her husband is murdered. Dorothy Koomson, your heroine, Saffron, at the start of this book, is in not a great place, really. Her husband has been murdered 18 months before. She discovers that her 14-year-old daughter is pregnant, and not long after the book starts, she also finds she has a stalker who writes her threatening letters. Now, you really like putting your heroines through the mill, don't you?
I really do. I think it's great. I love particularly putting people who are in already a fragile place, like Saffron is, having lost her husband 18 months earlier, under more pressure to see how they can withstand it, or if they do or they don't. And she doesn't a lot of the time, I think.
Several of your recent books have these sort of very dark themes, really,
yes.
But you didn't start out writing books like that. They were much sunnier to begin with, much more kind of conventional commercial women's fiction.
Yeah, the first two books, the Cupid Effect and the Chocolate Run, were quite sunny and happy, and, as you say, quite jolly, some of them. And
why the change?
My third book, My Best Friend's Girl, I decided to deal with the story of a woman whose best friend dies, and her best friend had a one-night stand with her fiancé and had got pregnant by him, and she didn't find out for 3 years, so she left. And then 2 years later, she hears from her best friend saying she's dying, and she's asked her to adopt her child. And I wanted to deal with something that was quite a difficult subject and put myself and the reader in a situation where you'd be really torn about what to do. And from then onwards, it became more interesting, I suppose, to write about these tough subjects.
Because Saffron in this book is under tremendous pressure, and she often, much of the time, she's not responding well to it.
No, she is under immense pressure, especially because she knows something about who killed her husband, which she doesn't actually tell to the police. And that I'm not giving anything away, because that's the start of the book, is the prologue between her and her daughter who knows something. And you don't know what they know or why they won't go to the police. And because of that, she's kind of stuck when she does start receiving the letters and all the other things that start happening in her life. So, yeah, she's under immense pressure. And I do, when I'm writing the book, I do wonder how I would put up with a situation, how I would fare in that situation, and also how ordinary people put up with these situations, because people across the world do find themselves in situations not too similar to Saffron, but in traumatic situations or dealing with the aftermath of a traumatic situation.
Now, a couple of years ago, you had the experience of seeing one of your books adapted for television, The Ice Cream Girls, which
Yes.
was televised, adapted as a three-parter by ITV.
Being back here, terrified.
It happened 17 years ago. It's over. No one remembers.
Yeah, but I do. It's all coming back.
Just think about Mum. She needs us.
These callous young women stabbed him 11 times.
Now, many authors are delighted when their stuff is picked up and dramatised. And I'm sure you, in many ways, were also pleased. But it wasn't an entirely happy experience, was it? Because what hit the screen was actually very different in several absolutely fundamental respects to what you'd originally written.
Yeah, I think they saw my story as a nice idea of how they thought domestic abuse and violence played out, and also how relationships between young girls and older men played out, and decided I wasn't correct, and so they did their version of my story.
Because a key part of your book was the idea that a young girl who is abused by an older man first is groomed by him. It's the man's fault, it's the man's agency which brings that about.
Yes.
And what happened in the adaptation was that she, as it were, led him on.
Yes, and also, I mean, even if she did lead him on, which I abhor that phrase, he's an adult, he can say no, and that didn't seem to happen in the TV. So,
How much detail do you go into in researching your books? Because one of the things, I think, one of your problems with the Ice Cream Girls adaptation was that you'd done a lot of research on these kinds of abusive relationships, and that was ignored in the television version.
yeah, and I'd talked to a lot of people, and I'd read a lot about the subject. And when I came to write the book originally, and I came up with the idea, the process of coming up with the idea for it, I thought I had an idea of what domestic violence, domestic abuse was about. And as I discovered, as I was researching, what I thought I knew was nothing like the reality. And domestic violence, in a physical sense, doesn't happen without emotional abuse and manipulation. And one of the key things I wanted to get across in the book is that it's fundamental, the emotional abuse and emotional manipulation is fundamental to a domestic violence situation occurring. The other thing that I really wanted to get across when I was writing The Ice Cream Girls, and also with all my other books, I think, is that it could happen to you. You don't necessarily have to come from a single parent family, be working class, and, you know, which is what I felt a lot of what they were saying with The Ice Cream Girls, because in my book, both girls are from two parent families, and they're both nice girls. And the main crux of the story was not knowing which one of them had killed the teacher, Marcus, because they were both people you felt you could know, you knew, or you could be. And I think that was kind of ignored in the book, in the TV version as well.
What do you want readers to take away from your books?
I want them to enjoy the story, maybe find out something new about a subject they didn't know about. A lot of the time when I start a book, I have an idea of what the subject's about, and every single time I've been proved wrong, and it's shown me that I know nothing, and I need to talk to people and research as much as possible.
So you started as a journalist, and there's still an element of the journalist in you finding things out.
Oh yeah, I love that. I mean, I've always been very interested in people and talking to people and eavesdropping, which I do a lot of. I sit on buses and trains. The other day there was a woman who had this fantastic conversation. It was one-sided, but she had this fantastic conversation, and I was listening to it all, thinking, oh, that could look good in the book.
taking surreptitious notes.
Yeah, no, it's all sticking in my mind, because she saw me, sat there writing things down. Yeah, so I love eavesdropping, I love talking to people, I love finding things out. Yeah, so that's sort of, before I became a journalist, that kind of was part of my personality, I think.
And you aim to root your books firmly in real life, in the world we live in.
Yes, at the moment. I might do science fiction at some point, she says randomly.
I can't wait. Dorothy Koomson, thank you very much.
Okay,
indeed.
thank you.